just inviting Aaron on now. Awesome. Mr. Abke.
Good morning, brother. Happy Monday to you.
Yeah, happy Monday to you as well. I'm super excited for this live. I've been sitting in anticipation to interact with your mind, body, spirit complex.
Likewise, man. I've been looking forward to it. It'll be fun.
Yeah, cool. How's my audio? I actually have my AirPods. Is this fine? Can you hear me?
Sounds good to me. I got mine
cool.
in too, so we're good.
Cool. All right. Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge you for all the work that you do. I just tuned into the Law of One really the last 6 months, and you were, it's funny because I would use this word before the Law of One, but you were a catalyst to that. And and like you, I love seeing the crossovers. There's so much crossover in Bashar's material. There's so much crossover in A Course in Miracles.
Yeah.
And I had a moment, I was actually sending a voice message to my team about this about 2 or 3 days ago, of some of the breakthroughs in relationships. And you wouldn't think of looking at the Law of One and reading the first couple of pages like, this is going to be a great relationship.
Right.
But man, I had some really powerful moments of like really being able to actually see myself and my journey through relationships for over the last maybe 10 years, and everything just made sense. And I landed in a place of going, I just feel so devoted to serving, but it felt genuine. It's like I could intellectualize that all I want, but it felt like so real, like it filled this part of me, so that's really, really dear to me. So I definitely want to hit on that in this call. And then anything you're really inspired to share as well. But sure. Before we dive into relationships and polarity and maybe some of the crossovers and whatnot, just for my followers that maybe are new to you, can you share like your 5-minute or less kind of story and background before we get into everything?
Yeah, I can even do 30 seconds, bro.
Yeah, give me 30 seconds. That's great.
So if you don't know anything about me, what you need to know is I grew up as a pastor's kid in evangelical Christianity. That was kind of my spiritual path until I was 23. Wanted to be a pastor, follow my dad's footsteps, went to Oral Roberts University, got my degree in music and theology to be a worship pastor, and then took my first job as a worship pastor and basically started questioning my faith at that point, because the church I was working at was very much more religious than I was used to. And so these ideas I had kind of pushed off to the side, I was really forced to face. And I just kind of went, I don't believe in this version of God. So that led me down a whole nother path of seeking, majoritively through Eastern traditions, Hinduism being the main one and Buddhism being second. And then through that found ACIM, Law of One, and started teaching those texts many years later. And so here I am.
Epic. Awesome. Cool. Well, I know relationships has been kind of in your consciousness recently as well. So why don't we start with that? I just want to give a brief description of my some understanding that I came to over this last week, and maybe you could expand on that a little bit. But you've talked about polarity a lot in especially in reference to the Law of One. And I revisited this old classic, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Have you read that book?
Not the book, no, but I know of it.
Yeah. Classic. And it talks about how, it's definitely more of a third density book with some like fourth, fifth density understanding, because it'll say like, the causation of some of these archetypes are our chemicals, it's our hormones. We know that that's going to be a reflection of this archetype that wants to express itself, like this polarity that's going, to express this polarity physically, we use these things called chemicals, and they influence what you want,
Ra even calls the third density bodies, they call them the chemical body in the Law of One.
Okay, yeah. So that makes so much sense. And in that text, he's basically proving that men have this ultimate desire to serve love, essentially.
Yes. Yeah.
And that women have this desire actually to be loved, to be cherished, so they can actually understand that they are just as loved as the love they're seeking. Yeah. And so there's always a part of me, and this crosses right over with Course in Miracles, that said, well, if I give too much, I might lose something. realizing like my definition of giving was not serving me. And so I got to this point when you said, man, I was watching your video on this on polarity, and you said that women, or the feminine archetype, is the positive polarity. And I've always thought of it as the negative polarity, because of like the void, the womb, going within, feeling deep emotion. And I started going, those are like, in a sense, negative means, or internally focused means to connect to this positive essence, which is the love that connects everything. Is that accurate, would you say?
Yeah, this is a really fun topic to talk about, because there's a lot of nuances in polarity. And you're very much correct. Like the Buddhist tradition, if you look at the yin and yang, they'll put the feminine as the negative and the masculine as the positive. But then in other traditions, like even in astrology, you look at the planetary polarizations, and the feminine planets are positive or whatever. And so this took me a while to understand the dynamics of polarity, and the difference lies between form and between function. Because in a sense, both polarities serve both roles, but one serves form while the other serves function, and then vice versa. So we could say that the feminine principle, or the feminine form, is positive, because it's the love, the radiating unconditional love, like motherly love for their child, right? Gives of itself without a second thought. That's that positive polarity, the nature of love. Masculine principle is the negative principle, because the masculine seeks to know, to understand, to have structure, and that's kind of like the grasping for itself. But then when we get into the function, the feminine function is negative, as in the womb, as in absorbing into itself. And then the masculine function is positive, because it gives, it's light, outstreaming.
Wow. Yeah. I love those distinctions, because, and something in the Bashar material, he's very, Bashar, I know you're very familiar with Bashar as well, very specific in definitions, and that it creates so much clarity. And what I got to, I think I was listening to your video, or maybe it was just the book, and I was walking around San Diego, and I just go, the old thought, and I was like just in inquiry in that moment. I was like, the old thought that I was believing was, if I can give too much, and if I give too much, I might lose freedom.
Right.
Realizing that thought, that belief in that thought was the source of not feeling free.
Yeah, there you go.
So then going, oh, wait a second. And then like the line from the Course came up, it said, only you can deprive yourself from anything, and you have what you give. And it just all started to make sense. And I'm like, wow. So I'm not just in a relationship. Like, this is a huge opportunity.
Oh yeah.
And that's when I started really going, oh my God, I actually think I know what like cherishing this really means.
Yeah, it's really amazing the way relationships, especially like intimate relationships, can be such a catalyst and really become your guru in that sense. And I think that another thing that's interesting about Law of One, and how Ra describes sexual energy transfer and relationship even at higher densities, is, I've heard a lot of people say this, and it would seem logical to say, well, since the fourth density is unconditional love, I would imagine that everyone in fourth density is polyamorous. There's no more intimate relationships, because you can't have specialness with someone if it's all unconditional. And in a sense, that's true. There's no specialness, as the Course of Miracles would call it, which is just ego love, right? I'm not actually here to love you. I'm here for what you can do for me, and you make me feel special about myself. So that's not in fourth density. But what Ra explains is that because intimate partnerships become such a huge catalyst for spiritual polarization, they say that intimate, you could almost say monogamous relationships are kind of the hallmark of higher densities.
Wow.
Because they will actually choose to begin pairing off, because they understand that by joining into an intimate relationship, each entity is kind of initiating themselves into an act of service, to where the other person becomes God to them, and they become their bhakti, their devotion, their service. And that's a hugely polarizing catalyst spiritually. Whereas if you're just going around giving off love to random people without really bonding and committing in that way, it just doesn't carry the same capacity for self-realization. And Ra actually calls it the doubling effect. saying whenever two entities come together with the same intention to seek the creator in that relationship, it actually has a doubling effect of how capable they are of reaching intelligent infinity.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And it reinforces this concept because I know that you've had some experiences when you really put together like the fractal expression of God. Oh, it went from this massive amorphous thing to a galaxy and a thing, and then I'm here and I'm like, I contain everything previous to me and I'm this extension. And I think you called it cosmic consciousness. I've had that experience with Bashar's 5 laws, and I wanted to do some crossover on this because I've had moments where I've been like, I could see these 5 laws in the grass. And that one moment of seeing it in the grass, it was like seeing it in everything. And universal. I just couldn't speak. I just cried and I just looked at everything and I went, I can actually see like the hand of God moving through everything. And I cannot find a reason, I cannot find any thought that says it doesn't exist in everything.
Right.
There was nothing to stop that. And it was just like this beautiful experience. But
the beatific vision.
Yeah. It was really, really powerful. And, but something you said I think is really important. It's like the 4th density relationship. It's not a content change. And I feel like so many times it's like, well, you just need to know the 5 love languages more. Just do more, just like, no, just give them more gifts or just take them on more dates. And it's all doing focused and content focused. And what it sounds like in the understanding of 4th density relationships is it's just a different context. It's our intentions for this relationship are different, and that's going to inform all of our actions. But that's almost like just the end result of what's, the meat of the relationship.
Yes. In that sense, it's really more about the sexual energy exchange in an intimate relationship, which is why higher density beings begin to pair off in that way. They call it the mated pair, Ra calls it, because you can exchange unconditional love with everyone. And I've heard this used before for people that are polyamorous. They say, well, if love is unconditional, why not give that sexual energy to everyone? And my question is always, well, like, why do you need to justify it like that? If you want to be polyamorous, that's fine. There's no problem with that at all. There's nothing wrong with that. The sanctity of sexual energy exchange is that just like 2 electrons, when they pair off or whatever, the charge continues to become more and more polarized over time as those 2 become stronger in their bonds together. So it's really about the bond and the charge you can create with one other entity. Whereas if you rip that and give it away to a new person, then you have to kind of start from scratch. So it's just about the efficiency you have in exchanging sexual energy in a spiritually conscious way. It actually begins to have a momentum that builds in the relationship.
Right. Okay, this is really interesting now. Remember when Ra says you're like a coil and your action determines like the potential, or I think he called it the work of the energy, like will it go towards positive or negative? When the doubling occurs, is that what's actually happening? Is the coil in a sense becoming one, and then that collective kind of choice is determining the collective potential and movement of the relationship during sex?
Yeah, I think that is the idea, that as you witness like an elderly couples, they can read each other's minds. They have the same mannerisms now. They've merged so much into almost like one being in 2 bodies. And that's the nature of love, is you join with whatever you love. And so Ra says that love is the strongest magic in the universe, because it's really we have the heart chakra here. You don't even get to the spiritual gifts until you pass through the heart, right? So without that universal love to connect you, literally psychically connect you with another being, you can't have things like telepathy and other psychic abilities to develop. So love really is the link between you and anything else. So like if you and I, Brandon, want to exchange thoughts telepathically, if we don't have love for each other, that's impossible. There's nothing in the quantum field that's joining us anymore, right? So love is that force, and as love is deepened and embodied and practiced, and you work through forgiveness and reconciliation, and that strengthens the charge. It's just a matter of efficiency, right? It's like if you're starting over every month with a new partner, you're just
Right.
not going to be able to develop that kind of a charge to do work.
Right, I got it. So what would you say, what would you say is the greatest challenge of a man in surrendering to like cultivating true love and giving in a relationship? Like why? Because that seems like it's a main challenge for men.
Hmm.
And then women, obviously the overgiving. Can we do like a zoom in? What's one of the main challenges of a man, main challenges of a woman?
Yeah, excellent question. If I'm speaking to third density males, I would say that,
Nowadays, that's, it's not an insult, but oh,
yeah,
that's just a third density male
yeah, that's
over
some
there.
third
Don't worry.
density shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so as you touched on in the beginning, Brandon, like the masculine um, principle is to know, to possess, to have, to understand. So it's like the nature of the masculine to want to pursue the feminine and know her and grasp her and take her and celebrate her. And the nature of the feminine, as you said, is to want to be celebrated and to be loved, because love is that innocence, right? It's totally innocent to its true nature. It has no clue what it is. It's just like shining love. So it wants to know itself through that adoration. So the feminine principle is to want to be adored by the masculine principle, and each one will fulfill its role. So like a truly masculine, like if you're a man with a lot of masculine energy, then you're probably gonna be satisfied by worshiping and adoring and loving the feminine. And that's where the man finds his sense of worth from and happiness from. It's not the other way around, right? Like you never see a romance movie where like a woman is climbing the mountain to slay the dragon, to rescue the man in his silk bed sheets on the, it's
Yeah,
not the
yeah.
archetype, right? It's always the opposite. It's the masculine pursues the feminine. But that can be the same in homosexual relationships between two men or two women. Masculine and feminine doesn't refer to gender, right? It's just an archetypal energy, those two polarities. So all that preface to say, now that we're on the same page with what we mean, typically what I see as the main problem for men, third density men here, is the distorted masculine principle becomes all about conquering rather than adoring and worshiping and devoting the feminine. It becomes conquering the feminine, possessing it. So the typical kind of insecure male ego needs to go out and sleep with as many women as possible and can't commit to a woman in an intimate relationship, because the more you are giving your energy away, the more desensitized you're going to become, and the harder it is to connect with somebody. So like an easy analogy is like if you imagine duct tape and you have a bunch of those like felt cushiony chairs that are like made of that felt material. If you just go from chair to chair and stick the tape on every chair, eventually the tape isn't able to stick anymore because it has so much of the energy from all the other chairs on it.
It's a good analogy. It's a really good analogy.
It's good, right? It works. So if that's the point that most men will or do find themselves in at some point, you go, okay, I've been doing this for 10 years. It hasn't fulfilled me. In fact, I'm more unhappy than ever. I want to be able to have an intimate relationship with a man or a woman, whoever it is. How do I have an intimate relationship with someone? Well, you just have to begin doing that healing work to rebalance your chakras, because every person you give your energy to that you don't have that unconditional love for, you're seeing them as an equally valid creature as yourself. If you're not exchanging sexual energy in that mode, then you're exchanging it in the negative polarity, which is I'm here to conquer you, you're my possession, you enhance me, etc., which creates more distortions.
The birth of a lot of S&M. Not that we can generalize anything as if it's based in a positive or negative polarity, but I'm sure a lot of that tends to be, well, I'm turned on because I get the sense of either dominating you or being dominated, which is, right, as Ra would say, some sort of blockage in those lower chakras.
Yes. So Ra says that negatively polarized sexual energy comes from basically 4 different things: desire to be possessed, desire to possess, fear of being possessed, or fear of possessing. So desire or fear for possession is negative. And now, again, negative doesn't mean bad or wrong. It's equally valid. Like BDSM is a negatively polarized sexual energy exchange, but doesn't mean it's wrong. If you're into that, that's fine. It's just about know the game you're playing, right? If you want the negative polarity, just know this stuff is going to take you down the negative path. If you want the positive polarity, this stuff's going to take you down that path. So it's always about what you want. And I think that if you are at that place where you're a man saying, okay, I've been in that trap of thinking that the more women I have, the more satisfied I'll be. I realize that's not true anymore. That's actually the first step to healing, to having intimacy again, is knowing that that can't fulfill me. So now my heart's not going to pursue that anymore because it's seen the futility of it. And then you can begin doing the balancing work.
Yeah. So funny because you basically described my story, you know, of like how I got here on this call with you now is, and it really clicked just this past week when I was going, oh, I'm actually watching my journey through the chakras very clearly.
Right.
And it started with really just not being taught how to feel emotion and how to understand and accept what I'm experiencing, and self-inquiry, which is like, it's still wild to me that none of that's taught in schools. That's a whole nother life.
I know.
But, so just not having that and then going, well, let me look at society. What does it mean to be a attractive man? It's like, well, I need to be a ladies' man.
That's what everybody tells you.
Yeah, I need to achieve. I need to be, you know, get the most attention in the room. I need to be the alpha, you know. And like you, I was a bodybuilder. I used steroids until I was like 215 pounds, and I mean went to like a pretty extreme of identification with the body,
right?
Of just seeking love and you know, trying to fill the societal role.
That was my path as well.
Yeah, we have a lot of parallels like that. And what happened was I basically was like the tape on a lot of different couches.
Yeah.
You know, and wound up one day actually, you know, paradoxically sitting on a couch, a real couch, and I'm sitting there and I'm just more empty than ever in my life. And meanwhile, you know, it's like I had this residual income. I was this top earner in a network marketing company. On the, you know, I had this body. On the outside, it was like, wow, what a attractive, successful man. Just like blowing back the phone with that energy.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. Just like, wow, what a powerful man. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, if I keep living like this for another year, I'm not gonna want to live.
Right.
And in that moment, it was like, I think I'm just gonna try doing the opposite of everything that I'm doing. And it was like everything that I studied, I started getting like spiritual texts or audios and whatnot just kind of given to me around 15 and 16 and 17, just by random figures in my life, you know, these catalysts. And I just started going back to everything that I've been recording but not embodying. I was like, it's time to actually do that because the pain was so great. And so I just saw the journey of, like they said, right, the Ra talks about the root chakra is kind of like the base culmination of everything, similar to kind of how the crown chakra represents the culmination, right? Isn't like the red is kind of like the foundation of physical reality, and then it kind of archetypally it expresses from there.
Yeah, the red ray and the violet ray, the crown and the root, are actually, Ross says, like the energetic shields or barriers of the energy body. So when you're in fear, like primal fear for survival, the red ray throws up an energetic barrier so that no other energies can come in right now. So that's why when we are in triggers, we don't have access to anything else but that fear, that panic, that adrenaline rush in the moment, because our animal energy has literally put up a shield in front of it.
That's so funny too, because that's such a man. I mean, it's a human thing, but it's also such a masculine thing to, when that goes up, to not talk it out,
right?
But to go in. And even in the, you know, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Like women can talk and process simultaneously because of their natural expression outward to others. And like, what do women love to do more than anything? Talk to each other. You know, it's like they can get a lot of stimulation.
Share, be vulnerable.
Yeah, and it's like we can go figure something out or build something, you know?
Yeah.
Singularly focused. And it's like a man will retreat inward when he doesn't feel safe to figure it out first and then present it.
Yes.
Where a woman a lot of time will just be perfectly fine.
They'll present it before they figure it out.
Exactly. And men can go, oh man, she's being so crazy, you know? And what they're really doing is they're actually being most of the time more efficient than men. Because they're just in full acceptance of their expression, i.e. the love center, where the man is, let me make sure I kind of got this right and figure this out. And so there's another edge of, well, I want you to express more to me, and I want you to
Right.
express less to me, and just figure it out. It's like men wanting women to think like men and vice versa.
Yeah, that's another great way of looking at it is the masculine principle we could say is the thinking, feminine principle is the feeling. So women just allow themselves to feel. They don't know any other way. They don't know how to block feelings out. Whereas men are the opposite. We want to think everything to death, but we don't like feeling it and being vulnerable with our emotions. And I think that that speaks to what the wounded masculine is at the very core of the masculine principle is it wants to love and adore the feminine and be intimate with the feminine. But the more distorted it is, the more energetic barriers have been built up against that desire for love, the more fearful the masculine will be to be transparent and be seen like that, right? So that they can't allow for their emotions to be seen, because deep down between that, I'm an alpha male, I conquer women, I'm the man, all that facade they're putting up, beneath that is a little boy who wants the romantic love, the Prince Charming relationship. And that's a vulnerable thing for the wounded masculine to show. So, and there's no consciousness of this though, right? That the masculine doesn't know that it's hiding all of this. It just kind of happens.
Yeah, and it's like Byron Katie says, like, you can't be more open than you are. And so many times it's like men are like, I just need to be more open and more vulnerable, and it feels impossible.
Yeah.
And then you just close even more. And, so I think one of the most rewarding things that I've ever received in a relationship was my partner going, hey, you don't need to open up right now if you don't want to.
Yeah.
Like, it's all good. Come to me whenever. And it was like, that moment was this permission to go, holy crap, I don't have to figure it out. I could just feel it and accept this and still feel connected to you. Not like I need to figure something out and then we can reconnect, which was the pattern over and over, because there's always something to figure out.
Yeah.
And so I just started to associate, if I'm triggered, then we're disconnected, and it's something in the relationship that's wrong. And it's like the relationship got the blame and the projection.
Right. Yeah. I think the key to this is to understand that like you said, if you can't open up, you can't open up. That's where you are. You're not the one, like those energetic barriers, those defenses that have been built over the years, they are things in and of themselves, right? They're in the chakra network. And so you can't just snap your fingers and get rid of them. So yeah, it's like, who's going to do it? Who's going to be vulnerable if you don't have access to that? So that's not really how you do it. It comes from the desire for vulnerability.
Right.
So if you're in that broken masculine place where you want intimacy, but you have no idea how to even go about that, you're so closed off and all of that. It's like, okay, so I can't be vulnerable, but can I just be in my desire to be vulnerable? And over time, that will work its way into manifestation in you.
Oh, that's so good. And I think for men, it's like that needs to click. And Bashar will talk about the motivational mechanism. We do what we believe is in our best interest, and we move away from what we believe is not in our best interest. So for a man, it's like, how is this in my best interest to actually be vulnerable? And it's like, I think the Course says the highest level of giving is from a selfish place. It's like you end up like this divine selfishness going, it's actually in my best interest and the others and all really, but it's really in my best interest to be vulnerable. And I think it comes down to redefining some of these core principles of the lower chakras, like safety and security. What does it mean to be safe? What does it mean to be secure? Am I safe when I'm like, what does it mean to be strong? All of these definitions, it's like, oh, if actually trying to be safe by holding on is what's creating my lack of safety, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
And I can drop that. And it's like, I think that's where a lot of men need to kind of be met. And why be vulnerable?
Yeah. That's the interesting aspect of how the polarities see reality and engage with it. Like, if you can imagine like a 6th density positive entity and a 6th density negative entity, like sit down at a debate table and debate reality and what's the correct view of reality. Especially if you read A Course in Miracles, which says, the darkness doesn't exist. It's an illusion. It's all made up in your imagination. And even Ra calls the negative path, the path of that which is not. So it's based on illusions, primarily the ultimate illusion of separation. But those two entities, the positive and the negative, could sit down at a debate table and they could have it out. and the negative would have just as good of arguments as the positive being would, and they would probably come to impasses over and over again, saying, well, from your perspective, that's a totally valid view of reality. So it's like they're actually both valid in that sense, but they have very different consequences. And so it's really not about which is the one correct view of reality as much as it is about which consequences do I want.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's so good. And that leads me to this principle. I think I first heard it in conversation with God. They were saying, and it was in reference to morality. It was, if you're not thinking in right or wrong, but what is the most efficient route to what you want to create, then you'll start to see that the positive path it's just about efficiency. And it goes from like this moral, emotional value judgment paradigm that I feel is very rooted in guilt, and let me try to be innocent, which creates more guilt, and let me defend myself if I'm feeling guilty, to let me just actually take it to a totally different faculty. Does it work for what I want to create? Right. What is it that I want to create? Does it work?
Yeah, it's really all about what you want. That's what the whole universe is about, because it's just the creator's desire to know itself. And that's the only real desire it is who am I, right? To explore that question. And so using the dream analogy is always the best, easiest one to understand how positive and negative works. So if we imagine you enter a dream world, the negative perception of the dream world or the negative path is, okay, this is all my dream. So everyone else doesn't exist. They're just dream characters in my mind. I am the God of this dream. And so there actually are no real rules. I make the rules because I'm God. So everyone else is a means to an end for me to enjoy my dream. So by using its willpower and its intellect, its cunning abilities, its craftiness to manipulate other people in the dream, other dream characters, it's like every time the negative entity uses its will to manipulate the dream, it becomes more godlike in the dream. And that's how it polarizes. So it's the path of separation. Whereas the positive path is just a little different twist on that. It says, okay, everything is me. Both paths acknowledge there's one creator. Everything is me, which means I am having all these experiences right now. So it's in my best interest to love all of these dream characters equally. And so by giving love, as the Course says, because you perceive that the other is thyself, you give love, and then you receive the love you give because it's you you're loving. And that's how the positive path polarizes and becomes more godlike in the dream. So both paths have a valid viewpoint according to their perception of it. It's just that each viewpoint has very different consequences.
Yeah, so epic. So I want to tie the kind of masculine challenge in a little bow, and then maybe we could switch over to the feminine and talk about that. But I think I am like a poster boy for like the main challenges of a male, at least in my spiritual path. And the way that I saw it was like, okay, a lack of understanding of really integration, like how to integrate the parts of myself that were based in fear, separation, trauma, then created in the yellow ray, or I guess that would be more of like the orange ray, emotional instability, kind of up to the yellow ray said, okay, now the way to reconcile that, to feel important, which I think it was Ra that calls this like the ego center. And it's where you start to want to get power over groups, right? So orange ray is like, I want power over the individual.
Yeah.
Speaking on the negative polarity. So yellow ray, power over groups. So I literally, orange ray, okay, I just need to get as many women as possible to feel significant.
Yes.
And then it was, okay, now I need to, in business, influence as many people as possible to feel significant and have them buy my products and create an empire. And that's what I was doing. So it was like orange ray, power over individuals sexually, yellow ray, power over individuals in financially.
Yeah. Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
This will summarize what you're saying perfectly, I think. If we're talking about distortions in the lower three chakras and how they express, we could say the red ray or the root chakra distortion is the rapist or the pedophile. The orange ray blockage is the playboy.
Mm.
And the yellow ray blockage is the cult leader or the corrupt politician.
Well, it's so funny because, being in network marketing, people can call that a cult a lot,
Right.
so it's
Yeah.
like, that's hilarious. So, wow. Yeah, totally perfectly summarized. And then the transition point for me was, being in some sort of gradation of the yellow ray. I know Ra talks about within each ray, there's 7 densities within, and then
Yeah.
7 and 7, and like total, it fractals out.
Yeah.
So would that would be the same with the chakra system too, because that's just a fractal of each density. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Sub densities.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if, I don't know if in the raw material he's defined some of these sub densities, but that would be a really interesting map to go, oh, well, the yellow ray is the ray of, power. You could just say as a generalization. And there's these 7 different gradations, and this one is kind of represented by this. Does he ever talk about any of the sub-densities and what they represent?
Yeah, that's interesting. They don't talk about sub-densities because they say every sub-density has 7 sub-sub-densities and
Yeah,
forever. So there's
yeah,
almost
yeah.
no point. It's like, well, it's all
Right.
the same thing really, but you're right. It's little gradients of each density in 7 more stages, you could say. So we just entered, let's say, 4th density here on Earth. So we could almost say we're like in the 1st density of 4th density or something.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, epic. So that transition point for me then was in the green ray, going, the pain of holding on and repeating the patterns of these first 3 chakras is so great that I like they say like the pain of staying the same outweighs the pain of change. And so in that
Yeah.
moment, it was like, and I feel like a lot of us have to take ourselves to that
Yeah.
extreme. And why I love the work that you and I do is like, these conversations I feel can accelerate or completely shorten that experience, because you could just play it out. Like, you could take from our experience, or you can
Right.
play it out in your imagination. It's like Tony Robbins, called the Dickens effect. He'll go, what does your life look like? Cue the music, cue the lights, cue everything to bring you into your imagination. What does it look like if you don't stop what you're doing in a year from now? And you build the pain up so much, you feel like you're experiencing it. And you go,
Yeah.
no more. And that desire is just born. And I think that's what it was for me. It was like a desire for true fulfillment, and everything started changing. So
Yeah. That's the beautiful thing, right, about the spiritual path is you never lose the game. You're always in the game. And truthfully, everything that happens to you is in one way or another helping you to win the game. So
right.
like if you have spent like you were talking about, many, many years just hooking up with random people, not giving any love or intimacy, and now you're like, oh no, I'm at this point. There's no oh no in that, right? That was your path, equally valid. You've learned through direct experience that it can't fulfill you, at least if you want the positive polarity. If you want the negative polarity, it definitely would. So now you have that contrast to say, okay, I'm going to try something new now. Let me change my ways and learn how to develop intimacy. And you would have never gotten to that place if you hadn't gone through that journey. So it is all valid. There's no guilt involved in it. As
Yeah.
Ra says, there are no mistakes in the law of
Right.
one.
Right. Yeah. And what you said, it reminds me, and with my team, we have this philosophy called the game of the game. So it's like the game that you're told to play is anything physical. Like, go get this, go gain that, go get a good relationship, go build a big business, even go find enlightenment. Even these things that they just represent something in time and space.
Yeah.
And it's like when we met with our business, before we launched our business, we said, what will make this a success? And if it's based on anything in the game that we're kind of given a physical reality, we're already failures.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're reaching for something that is in the future. And what's the best way to keep something in the future? Put it in the future. It's like, you want to keep chasing it, just keep thinking it's in the future. That's just what it's
right.
going to keep creating. So it was like, what can we base our success on? And first of all, it was questioning, like, is success even a real thing? And really going backwards to, well, then what's the point? And it was our own self-realization.
Yeah.
And that's the whole purpose of our business. It's not to sell anything. It's not to get anyone to join. It's not even for anyone to get any results, because that's all out of my control. It's for my own self-realization. And just the conversation lended to moments of self-realization. So we go, we're already fulfilled from the business. then paradoxically, we surpass all of our goals time and time again because they're not our goals.
Yes.
You know?
I love that. It's like the end is where you begin.
Yes.
Like, what is it we're all really looking for here? To make
Right.
lots and lots of money. Well, but if that money makes us miserable, is that really what we wanted? Okay, good point. I guess it's to be fulfilled or something. Like, boom, there it is. We're doing
Yeah.
this ultimately to be fulfilled. So
Yeah.
let's just be grateful for the work we're doing now, be fulfilled in the work we're doing now. And yeah, you work backwards from the end point. And now everything you're doing has been exalted to its highest expression because now it's authentic. It's not a means to an end. I'm doing this to get money. Well, if you're doing that, it becomes more corrupt, right? We've seen that in our world big time. It's got to be from an authentic place.
Yes, yes. Because then I'm going, well, I'm doing this because it's who and what I am. Because I can't find a reason to not do it.
Right.
You know, because it's such a natural momentum of my soul. I gotta do this. Just I don't know why. Yeah, it's just it's like I'm just extending my most natural self.
Yeah.
And then what happens, you know, paradoxically, you're attracting people that join and will connect with you that are also on that frequency of going, I'm not here to actually take anything from you. I'm not here to get anything from you. I'm here because it feels very natural and like me. Like I feel like me around you or around them, and you have these authentic connections. And so I always say, it's like, if you think there's a client that you need to support, you're already out of it. You know,
right.
There really is no client, but there's you doing the work for your own self-realization and shifting to different versions of reality where they can mirror and match if they choose.
Yeah. It's like there is no spoon from the Matrix. That is such a powerful scene, right? Because the implication of that is, I think the kid says, realize it's not the spoon that bends, but yourself, meaning you are the Matrix, right? Everything is you. Yeah. And so that's how Neo accesses his powers in the Matrix. And eventually the third movie, when he's having that conversation with Agent Smith, he realizes that like he is the Matrix realizing itself, basically. He is the self-aware Matrix, right? Battling with the old paradigm of the Matrix, which was the program, which is Agent Smith. So it's like the old and the new, the awakening.
Super yellow ray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such an amazing analogy.
Really good. Yeah. And the same thing, just to tie it back into relationships, it's like, how I'm sure you've experienced this so many times. And to me, sometimes this could get literally kind of spooky. You're just like, man, I'm a little triggered from my partner. You know, they're off doing their thing. I'm going to go into inquiry. I come to some sort of realization. They come back a total reflection of my new internal realization.
I love that.
And I've had experiences where, you know, Ashley will come be like, oh, I'm just stressed about money. And something in that triggers me, and maybe where I'm stressed about money. So I'll go in, I'll do inquiry, either share it or not. It just depends if it's relevant or not. And then, but I've had this moment several times where I've made the shift in myself and go, oh man, I feel so abundant. And without any communication, she'll come back and be like, I feel so abundant. Oh, and by the way, I just got sent $300 from this random thing that this person owed me. And I'm just going, oh man, the moment I think you need to do the work, that you need to change something, you know, that you need to figure out your abundance thing, for me, I'm just out of it. And how many times actually when I kind of look at you and go, oh, where does that live in me? And maybe that's why this is occurring. For more freedom and liberation for me, then I just notice the reflection. Yeah.
Well, what you're getting to now is so huge, because it's like showing how a relationship really is a microcosm of like what we see in the world today, in the sense that when you're like, what normal people do in a relationship, typically rather, is let's say my partner does something that triggers me, hurts my feelings. Then we sit down and say, okay, you did this and it really hurt me when you did that. And so I need you to not do that anymore in this relationship. Like, okay, I'll try to change and not do those things that trigger you. So instead of taking responsibility for my imbalances, I'm asking my partner to tiptoe around them for me, which is just a ticking time bomb, right? You've now just put a landmine under the dirt. She's going to step on it eventually. And then you're going to have even more anger towards her because you made your trigger about her, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing in our society today, is always pointing the finger at everyone else. No one's looking at themselves. It's just labeling, blame casting, and scapegoating. And that's
Yeah.
called spiritual bypassing. You don't make any progress doing that other than the damage you're doing to yourself. So at some point when you really want freedom, I like to say freedom is really just the choice you make to stop tolerating suffering. Like, okay, I'm done. I'll do whatever it takes to not suffer. Then your partner does or says that thing that triggers you, and you go inward. You go, okay, what is it in me that's weak enough to be hurt by that? What am I not seeing, like you said, in myself? Where does that live in me? And I know, as you've expressed, what I learned to do in relationships is sit with it, feel it, contemplate it. What's the source of this? Where is this coming from? Where's my imbalance? Once I feel like I've worked that out and had some answers, then I go to my partner and say, okay, so I'm ready to talk now. Here was my perception when it happened. Here's what I realized I was not seeing in myself. And in that space, my partners have always been like, wow, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you telling me how you feel. And even though it was your trigger, not mine, I'm sorry for hurting you. I didn't intend to do that. And we have this beautiful reconciliation, which was only possible because I made it about myself. I took responsibility.
Right. Yeah. And that's so powerful because in relationships, it's like the definition, and I feel so many people, including myself, will go into a relationship not knowing what it's for. Like, what's the design? What is this? What's the purpose of this relationship? And the illusion is to get my needs met, which reinforces that I have needs, that I'm this body and I need things from you to be happy, like sex, like whatever, attention, like validation, because somehow I lack those things, right?
Yeah.
i.e. the special relationship. So it's like, you're not giving me what I need. And if I'm really smart, I'll use my spiritual language and start saying, well, you're a narcissist and you're just, it's all you, and you need to give me more. And if you don't, you're bypassing, you know, and that's a form of bypassing. So we'll use the spiritual principles to then, justify, blame, I'm unsatisfied because of you. And really, that's actually the need being fulfilled. You actually need that to come up, right, as a part of your curriculum in that relationship, to forgive it, which in Ra talks about is the end of the inertia, right, the end of that cycle. So now you go, oh, this is an opportunity for forgiveness. It's not where I'm doing something or they're doing something wrong, but it's an opportunity for forgiveness.
Another excellent point about why the intimate bonded pair is so powerful for spiritual growth, because how much can somebody that you just met really trigger you? Like almost not at all, right? You don't even care what they do or say because you have no history with them. You don't care what they think. But somebody you have a long history with and have shared intimacy with, their opinions and feelings matter to the ultimate, which means it will draw out of the chakra network the deepest parts of you and bring them into the light and say, are you ready to heal that? And you either say yes or no. But if we're really serious about spiritual growth and we start looking for these opportunities for really powerful catalysts, like even like accepting pain as a spiritual catalyst is something we start to do. This is why people do cold plunges and stuff. It's because they want to put themselves in the most painful, uncomfortable position and accept it and breathe through it and strengthen their mind, right? It's like the relationship becomes like that, where you say, I'm in this, I'm with you, we're here to serve the creator together, which means to serve one another. So it means we have to work through our shit. We can't bypass, we can't avoid, because both of our growth is at the expense of that if we do.
So it's like, man, what makes our relationship a success is not that things don't come up, it's that they come up.
Exactly.
What I do with
it, work through them.
What I do with it matters. If I want to polarize positive, I work through it. If I want to polarize negative, I separate. Again, law of one says they're both equal paths. But wait a second, maybe what I want from you isn't what I need from you. Maybe I need this to come up. I don't need to get my wants fulfilled. So in my forgiveness, I actually attain that which I wanted from you, which is always love, connection, togetherness, all of these things.
Yes. Well, that's another great point about the negative. Really, the negative versus the positive is we could look at it in how they handle pain. The positive polarity allows the pain and feels it and says, you're okay, I can feel you. And the negative tries to transcend pain meaning like, I feel nothing. I'm dead. You're dead to me. Yeah, you can't affect me. I'm closed off. I'm invincible to pain. And so the negative path will use things like pain or even like death to polarize more, to conquer the fear of death by facing death. So like negative entities will, as a spiritual practice, murder another entity and try to feel nothing but more power as a result, to become even more feelingless in relationship to pain. That's the negative path. So another good opportunity to look in your relationships and saying, am I trying to numb this pain? Because if I am, I'm polarizing negatively, right?
Right. Like, am I watching way too much Netflix? You know, like, am I just doing these distraction? Like, I think Ra calls them like inventions, toys. There's a whole category he talks about, and how some of them, like certain games, can actually be really great to like engage your mind, body, spirit complex and turn certain things on, you know, but how most of them are a distraction. And why do we distract? Because there's some belief that says, I'm afraid of the fear. I'm afraid to look at or to feel the fear. So Aaron, what would you say for the men and women listening? If I were to say, what would be a definition of relationships that someone could live by, that would create a very positive experience of relationships? And what are some practices or insights to help people really crystallize that definition in their relationships?
Excellent question. That is the question, isn't it? Of this conversation. Well, I think you made another good point, which I'll touch on quickly before that, which is about the wounded masculine. Typically, in terms of getting numb towards pain, you mentioned like we medicate our pain with Netflix and avoidance mechanisms. A Course in Miracles calls that magic. The ego's magic is like things in the world you think can bring you happiness and pleasure and avoid the pain. Drugs, special relationships, Netflix, you name it. And so a lot of the wounded masculine comes from a man who has been deeply hurt in relationships in the past. And so that wounded masculine closes itself off and says, I feel nothing. I'll never give my heart to the feminine again. I'll never feel love again. I'm just here to conquer and dominate. That's all that's what's going to fulfill me now. Yeah. So in recognizing that would be the first step to healing it and exalting it. But in terms of your question about relationships, I would say that probably one of the best working definitions I can think of now would be a relationship is your devotion, your bhakti. And seeing it like that is the best way to polarize positively, because it's not about you. I'm not dating this person. I'm not in a relationship with this person because they make me feel more special, because they're attractive or whatever. I am in this relationship because I see this being and I love them so much that I want to serve them and I want to give my love to them all my days, right? That's the mentality of a bhakti-based relationship. And now, and you have to find a partner who's in this with you. It can't be a one-sided thing, right? Yeah. Both have to agree, yes, this is what our relationship is about. We're serving God through each other. Once that is in place, then you can begin these amazingly powerful practices, which in my experience are just unspeakably beautiful in intimacy. The way that sexuality evolves and develops, the more you become self-aware, the better lover you become. The more you love your partner, the more you can connect with their body in sexual energy exchange. And truthfully, you get to this point where you become one being making love to itself with two bodies. And that's when you're exchanging that green ray, open-hearted sexual energy. And it's just incredibly polarizing. You know, you feel euphoric afterwards versus a negative exchange. You typically feel kind of guilty or maybe afraid or unsettled. So you can tell what energy was exchanged based on what you feel. And yeah, those kind of practices of seeing the other as my guru, treating them as such, you are here to mirror me, and I will take everything you show me with gratitude and love. That's the most powerful practice. Yeah, wow, that's powerful. And it reminds me, and I want to, you're capped at an hour, you have a hard stop at 11? We can go a little longer if you want. Okay. I had this experience, and this was only maybe a month ago, and Ashley got home from a retreat, and it was like 2 weeks of not seeing her, and I'm just, I just really want to make love to her. I'm like, you're back, yeah. Yeah. And we had Thai food, love making, usually not in the same equation. Yeah. And, so they cancel each other out.
Yeah, understandably cancels the polarities, just an
Yeah.
empty coil. So understandably, Ashley just doesn't want to have sex. I'm really bloated from the Thai food and I'm tired. I just traveled to, I don't want to have sex. And I go,
Mhm.
man, I'm really wanting to have sex. And I think that's such a challenging thing for men, because then usually it's, well, I'm being deprived. Now I
Triggers the
need to
wounded
go,
masculine.
yes,
Yeah.
now I need to go get what I'm being deprived from.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in that moment, and it was funny. We were visiting Ashley's mom's home, and I was sleeping on the floor because it was a really small bed, and I wanted my own space, and I like firmer, firmness anyway.
Mhm.
So I go lay down, and I'm sitting there, and this thought comes to mind: do I want sex, or do I want emotional intimacy in this moment? Not in that moment, but in this moment, because all I was feeling in this moment was restriction, was
Yeah.
contraction. So I go, in this moment, is this, what do I want right now? What do I really want? And it was
Yeah.
like emotional intimacy. And it went deeper than that after I gave myself the intimacy, because then I realized I just wanted to feel one. I wanted to feel at one
Connect.
with, yeah, the Course would say, with my Father. So in that moment, I'm laying there and I go, I just actually want to connect with myself in this moment. And I just hug myself like this, and I'm laying there, and I have tears coming, and I'm just feeling everything really without a story,
Mhm.
like who would I be, like Byron Katie says a lot, who would I be without a story, if this is right or wrong, if I'm deprived or not, if I just tuned into an actual sensation for the sake of it and let it be there. And I did that, and it just kind of washed through my body. And then on the other side of it was like, that's what I really wanted. I wanted to feel connected to myself, and nothing can take that away from me. Nothing can ever, get in the way, except for my own mind, except for my own thoughts, what I choose to believe. And it was such a
Yeah.
powerful moment of going, wow, I need nothing. And in our course, the 13, the first principle is needlessness,
Mhm.
of going, wow, I'm here to need my way to needlessness, you know?
Yeah. It's the only what I don't give can ever be lacking.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And that's, I think, in anyone who wants what you're describing, that intimate relationship of conscious union with your partner,
Mm-hmm.
um, if that's what you want, then that's another point where you have to be honest with yourself and say, am I in that kind of relationship now? Does my partner have those same intentions? Because if that is what you want, you need to find somebody who wants that. And you can't make anybody want that, right? It
Right,
has to
right.
be authentic or it won't be real. And there's a lot of spiritual relationships where it's one person trying to force the other person to be more spiritual for them and be in this kind of conscious union with them, and they're not there yet. And so
Mm-hmm.
you're just spinning your tires, right? So whether, on both sides of the coin, positive or negative, you do have to be honest about what you want
Mm-hmm.
and be willing to not settle for less than what that is, because it is so sacred to have that kind of union. And it's not just like everyone walking out on the street wants that. I mean, it is a rare thing, and it takes time to find and attract a being like that into your life. So I say, honor that and make that your sanctity of I'm saving myself, I'm committing to this path that I want, because every step you take is sending a signal to the universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a good friend who she talks about how she's very much been wounded in
Mm-hmm.
relationships, and she'll say all day long what she wants is love. I
Mm-hmm.
want love, I want intimacy, I want one man happily ever after. But then she's like, but I'm just gonna have a wild summer because I'm so sick of trying. I'm just gonna go out and hook up a bunch. I'm like, cool, sounds awesome, but just know that that's working you backwards from what you want, right?
Right.
Like that's just not going to lead you where you want. It doesn't work that way. You have to choose which path you want. If you want intimacy, a safe, intimate container with someone, create it for yourself, with
Yeah.
yourself first, just like
Right.
you described. Give it to yourself.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's like that wanting for love is that first manifestation, right, of the ego going, I want something more than I have. And so right in
Right.
that moment, if I am not either doing inquiry or allowing myself to question those thoughts, then I actually believe that I can get it, that
Yeah.
I can get love from someone else. And I think this is why breakups hurt so bad, is like, I believe you actually gave me something.
Yes.
You gave me love, and I personified my sensation of love when I'm around you as you. Like
Yeah.
you were the source of it.
And now I'm
And
lacking love, right?
yeah, so like you leave, it literally feels like you're tearing my heart out or ripping my arm off. Like a part of me that I felt I gained, I can now actually lose. And I think the fear of loss in a relationship is one of the hardest things for a female, or for the feminine aspect, is oh man, I found this now, someone who's adoring me. What if I lose it? And how that is this, perfect mirror or curriculum for them to go, maybe I need to question what gain and loss is and what the source of this sensation is. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so powerful to see that the wounded, we talked about the wounded masculine. So the wounded feminine basically does the opposite, and that makes both of the wounded polarities a great match for each other, because what the wounded feminine does, it wants to be adored so badly by the masculine, but if it's wounded and disempowered, and it's, like we said, not giving itself that love, it will be willing to say yes to whatever masculine energy comes at it, which is how it puts itself through cycles of abuse and all of that. And so the feminine has to learn, no, I'm not just going to take this from anyone who wants to give it. I want the kind of love I deserve to have. And so first, it's about giving yourself that love you deserve.
Yeah.
Once you're giving it to yourself and you find happiness in yourself, you don't need to waste your time and energy on just anybody. You're more than happy to wait until, the best case scenario comes along. Like if you really want an 11-ounce ribeye from Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, are you going to say yes to the Burger King patty? Like, of course not. So that's where the wounded feminine, what the wounded feminine works on, is loving itself and giving itself the love it so seeks from the masculine, because only then, when both polarities have been fulfilled in themselves, is the charge is positive now, and then they can meet in that conscious divine union and begin polarizing.
Yeah. And I think what's really worth, like maybe these last 6 minutes, depending on how long you want to jam, is really distinguishing love versus special love. Because I think when we go, just love yourself, people go, how the hell do I do that? And it's kind of like saying, just be present. What do I do to be present?
Right.
It's like, you are love. So the question is not how do I love myself, but what am I holding on to that's pushing love away? And I think often it manifests in going, what they did to me, first of all, exists, as the Course would say, but second of all, means something about me, and we take that with us from a very early age. The lack of love this person gave me, the cheating that happened, I have made that mean something about me that I have yet to question and release. And so I keep attracting the same exact pattern. And if I don't question it, if I don't go within, I keep proving to myself that I'm not worth it.
Yes.
And so what would you say is just a way to transcend that pattern and actually start to not learn how to love yourself,
right,
but actually love yourself? And how does that differ from special love?
Yeah, great question, man. It's you see only in time, through healing, that you don't ever have to acquire love. You really don't. It is there. It's always there. You, as the Course says, remove the barriers you've built to obstruct that love. And so if we're talking about imbalances in the chakra network, you made a good point bringing up being cheated on, let's say. So if you've been cheated on in the past and you define yourself by that, you identify with that, it hurts you to think about it. That's because you are defining yourself by that action in some way. So now that's a distortion in the negative, in the root chakra or the sacral chakra. And so that's a distortion that now, as you said, will attract more of that catalyst to you, because as we said, the negative function is to attract to itself. So it's literally the lower 3 chakras, which are the earthly primal chakras, that attract catalyst to you, to the person. So if you have distortions of abuse, trauma, being cheated on, neglected, abandoned in the network, you're going to keep attracting people with those energies who will do that to you again. So that's for the ultimate purpose of finally slapping yourself awake and going, oh, I need to do something. I need to change. I need to heal. I keep attracting the same partner over and over again, or the same problem over and over again. And then it becomes about awareness. You just become aware of, where have I identified myself with past stories, with what's happened to me? How can I see myself as a new creation in this moment? That nothing's ever happened to me in that sense. I am as my Father created me, as the Course would say. How do I know myself only in this moment without past associations? And that's how we begin to love and heal the past. So the shadow work is so important because you're literally purging the chakra network from those distortions that if you don't, they're going to be at points of attraction towards you.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I think there's moments of self-realization when we go, this is what happened, but it's not the source of my suffering.
Right.
What happened can never hurt me.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with me. It can't affect me. And that's so hard sometimes, especially when there's the physical aspect, like physical abuse and sexual abuse. And I work with a lot of people that have had physical and sexual abuse. And it's like, well, of course that's affected me. Well, of course there's a physical effect in the moment. Of course there's a physical rush of chemicals and fear and instinctual responses.
Because it happened to the body, right?
Yeah. So
but
there's
the
body consciousness. Mm-hmm. Right. So of course your body had an experience. And this hit me so strong in the last couple of months. It's like every traumatic body experience is here to help us re-identify with the spirit, to transcend it. So it's actually going here, you're ready for a new identity. And I call that just drawing the larger circle. It's like I've been existing within this circle of my sense of self. So every experience that I have is bound to this circle. And this is a painful, small circle. And so I'm getting these experiences to bust this circle open so I can actually see myself as I really am and realize, holy crap, you're telling me I'm the source of all my suffering?
Yeah.
What I made those meaningless things mean about me, actually is what hurt me. And there's this radical responsibility that I feel like, in the Course will say this, could easily turn into self-blame and shame. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Oh man, you're telling me I'm responsible for these things? And that's not the case, where people go, man, I'm totally responsible for this person attacking me. And it's like, of course we're not responsible for what their bodies do.
Right.
All we could say is every single choice in my life led me to be in an interaction with them. But that's the end of my responsibility.
Yeah.
Everything after the event, if there's suffering, is a product of an unquestioned mind. And I think that is a very liberating path to forgiveness.
It is, man. It's all about love and meeting everything with love, because that's the only kind of, cheat code in the game, we might say. Like through love, you escape every trap, you answer every question correctly. You fill in love in the space, you always get the right answer, right?
They say, it's like the Course says, you can't there's two different quotes that are coming to mind. You can't have peace and understanding at the same time. And you cannot understand something if you don't accept it first. Yeah. It's like, I don't understand why this has happened to me. I don't understand what's going on. Really means I'm not accepting what's going on, which would give me a sense of understanding, which means if I'm not in peace about something, I can't see it in the way that my higher mind or God would see it. I cannot have an understanding that I guess we would call that would be like sixth or fifth density understanding.
Understanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I just did a meme post last week or 2 weeks ago where I talked about how you can't really, to know reality is to love it. So you won't understand reality until you first love it. Yeah. Loving comes before understanding. The fourth becomes before the fifth, right? Love before wisdom. Because in a sense, it is the highest wisdom to love. Right. So yeah, if you are responding to everything with love, I don't know why that person betrayed me or hurt me, but I'm just going to choose to love them and forgive them because they must be going through a lot of pain to have done that. When that's your mentality, like you don't actually understand the reason why anything happened to you. You don't have the answers, but you go back to your life review when your incarnation's over. And let's say, your higher self is reviewing your whole life with you. And now you see all the back end work behind the curtain of like, oh, she was abused at this age and that's why she took it out on you. And you're like, I didn't even know that. Wow. And your higher self's like, yeah, you didn't, but you chose to respond in love, so you passed the test anyway.
Right.
Like, whoa, right. It was like a free escape, from the lesson.
Yeah. So it's like men can easily, well, I don't know if it's going to be easy, but men can shift to, let me understand you, women, feminine, which I think is nearly impossible. Like, what's the best way to understand? Don't try. Yeah. So let me accept you, not try to fix, not try to figure it out, just accept what you're experiencing. and give empathy. And the woman can go, let me attempt to understand your process of learning how to accept me, in a sense.
Yeah.
You know, so you need time, you need to go somewhere, you need to think. Okay, I can try to understand that while you accept, you know, that I might
Yeah.
not always understand that.
Such a good point. The masculine has to at some point concede its need to understand the feminine,
Yeah.
and realize that to understand her is just to love her, because that's what she
Yeah. Yeah.
wants. The
Yeah.
ultimate purpose of the feminine is to be loved by the masculine. The ultimate purpose of the masculine is to love the feminine. That's how love knows itself. So you're very much correct there. It's like at some point the masculine has to give up its need to understand, and then the feminine has to give up its need to change the man to be what she wants or whatever, but just to love him where he's at and understand his process is the way it is, like you said, and let that just be an unconditional thing.
Yeah. Yeah. We just have one question here I'd love to get your perspective on. It just said, what can you say about craving someone's attention? How to transcend that?
I saw that. That's a good question too. You know, this is the special relationship stuff the course talks about. It's always a point of self-inquiry, right?
Right.
If you want someone's attention so bad, question the one who wants the attention. Because you can't stop wanting the attention if you think you are the one who wants it.
Right.
So you have to look inwards. Who wants this attention? And then you start to see answers of, oh, it's actually just an insecure ego who thinks it can get something, it can be fulfilled through that attention. And then you just question it, right? Is that really true though? Let me look at my past to see if I have any experience to draw from. And you start looking back. Yep, I had lots of attention back then. That relationship, lots of attention. And yet I was still miserable. And here I am, just as unhappy. So it didn't fulfill me in the past. Will it really fulfill me this time? And as you sit with those questions, in my experience, they begin to really crystallize you. And that desire, that need for attention and validation just begins to drop away, because you realize it's futile. It doesn't exist. There is no fulfillment there. And so let me not waste time and energy chasing it. And then all of a sudden you remove that obstacle to your love, and you actually do feel more love for yourself.
Right. Yeah. So I love that so much. And my thought was, the moment I think I can gain something from attention from you, I'm already in loss. Yeah. And that's what's actually fueling my need to get attention from you. So it's like Byron Katie says, it's like, number one, is it true? Can I gain something from you? Or do I tell a story that creates an illusion of gain? Oh, look, you know, I'm getting all this attention from my girlfriend, from Erin. Look at all this attention. Is it true that I'm actually even getting attention? Is it true that my partner's actually even thinking about me? I can't really know any of these things. So I just go, man, all I would be getting is my own story, validating my own story. Can I tell that story without needing anything to change?
Yeah, a lot of times, especially in a special relationship, the kind of attention you think you're getting is really just your partner loving and giving attention to her ideas about you and how you make her feel special. So she's only giving you attention for her because it makes her feel good. So it's like, I'm not actually being fulfilled in that sense, because, okay, I'm so fulfilled by this attention. Are you really though? Because what happens if I take it away? Now what? Oh, now you're back to the square one again, feeling miserable. So were you actually fulfilled? Probably not, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, cool. Oh, Aaron, this has been an epic conversation. It's 11:15. I feel like we could go for literally an entire day. Like our mind, body, spirit complex would be perfectly sustained just from, prana. I did have one question if you have time for one more.
Yeah.
A little off topic, but I think it's kind of just ties back into what we said before, changing the context versus the content. Ra talks about the law of one. So maybe after I ask this question, you could start with defining the law of one for people that might not be aware of it. How do you see that connecting to the 5 laws that Bashar has talked about? And are you familiar with the 5 laws that Bashar has talked about?
You have to refresh me on that.
I'll run it by you real quick. You exist, or existence is. The all is one, the one is all. There's the law of one.
Yeah.
What I put out is what I get back. Everything is here and now. The only constant is change, except for the laws. So those are the 5 laws, and they build on each other. It's like existence is. What does that mean? Its nature is to exist, means it's infinite.
Yeah.
That infinite existence is the one, and the one is the all and the many.
Mm-hmm.
That many, as it interacts with things, gets what it puts out.
Yeah.
Everything that it's experiencing, that it's putting out and getting back, only happens here and now. And the only constant to that experience is change, except for these laws that give the construct for all of that experience to take place.
Yeah. That's really rad. That's very much everything Law of One points to, everything A Course in Miracles points to.
Right.
Because those are really like timeless spiritual truths.
Right. So you'd say that and the Law of One are just really synced up.
Totally harmonious. Yeah. That's the ultimate message of the Law of One, is everything is the creator knowing itself, even the negative path, right? So it's all to be loved. It's all equally valid, but it has its rightful place. Like the positive and the negative polarities don't really interact after third density, because they have very different missions and purpose. And the only interactions they do have typically are just repellent reactions to each other. Because the positive allows the negative and wants nothing to do with it. The negative wants to conquer and dominate the positive. Positive isn't interested in that, so they just kind of go their separate ways. So it's all the creator knowing itself. It's all one, and it's all happening now. And that is really what we're all doing here, is just to be the creator knowing itself in your unique way, in your individual way. Such a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Wow. Epic. Well, what do you want to leave the people with? I know that you're doing your free I Am Part 2 kind of series. I signed up for that yesterday. I'm going to check that out.
Yeah.
I know you're doing that. What else are you up to? What do you want to share before we jump off?
Well, I have a lot of really fun, exciting stuff coming up this year. Some of which I can't say yet, but for right now, it's definitely my Remember I Am challenge. I've been working all year long on this thing. It's a kind of a 4-week kind of mini masterclass that's free. Anyone can sign up for it. And the first video drops today on my channel at 5 p.m. And if you want to sign up for that, the link is in my bio on Instagram. It'll be in the description box of the video, and you'll literally get access to a platform with course content material, meditations, worksheets, phone wallpaper backgrounds. So really trying to give people a taste of what taking a masterclass is, and just give it to the world for free. And it's on the 4 yogas. So each week we'll be covering a different yoga. And this week we're starting with Raja Yoga, which is kind of the yoga of stillness and meditation. So it'll be fun. Love to have you guys.
I highly recommend it to anyone watching to tune into Aaron's stuff. I love your content, man. It's totally been, for me, Bashar's material, A Course in Miracles, The Way of Mastery, you know, whole lineage. What else? All of that came in really strong over the last 10 years. And the Law of One has just come into my consciousness as like this, oh yeah, we can kind of encapsulate all of that into the problem. So it's been a really fun, I almost like, feels like I'm on the beginning of another journey.
For sure.
And at the same time, it feels like, oh my God, these feel so familiar, you know? So
yeah,
really, really good.
Well, thank you, brother, so much for having me. It's been a blast. We definitely got to do it again.
Yes, for sure. All right, brother. Love you guys, and I'll see you next time.
Much love to you, man. Talk soon.
See ya.